Can we have roll call, please, Ida?
Dr. Verlito,
Yes.
Dr. Campbell,
Yes.
Dr. Askew,
Here.
Chair Blackwelder,
There,
we have a forum.
any public communications? Any public out there online or anything?
I show no public.
Nothing's been in writing or anything. Okay,
No public.
so we go to approve the May 3rd, 2023 personnel committee minutes. Does anybody want to motion to approve those? Yes, so moved. Is there a second?
I'll second, ask you.
All in favor?
Excuse me,
Sure.
with someone participating virtually, you need to do a roll call vote.
Roll call, okay. Roll call?
Dr. Verlito,
Yes.
Director Campbell,
Yes.
Dr. Askew,
Yes.
Chair Blackwelder,
Yes.
motion passes.
Now go on to the item number 2, which is the presentation of draft final budget.
Thank you, Chair. At this time, we have Garth Gregson, our finance manager. He'll be giving us a very short presentation on the final adjustments that we had to our finalized budget proposal. And at this time, we'll turn it over to Garth.
All right. Hey, good morning, everybody. As Felipe mentioned, this will be a short presentation of the final draft budget. Since we've had a chance to look at a lot of this information previously at the finance and board meetings. So here is kind of a summary of what's happening in the final version of the 2024 budget. Compared to the preliminary budgets you've been looking at, the total revenue number is not changing. We're still at 51.2 million. Our cost of employment is staying the same at 19 million. A couple of items that are part of that cost of employment. We did get our final invoice for our workers' comp premium for fiscal 24. It is a little lower than what was originally put in the budget. However, since we have to do a couple of things with the workers' comp, one of the items that we have to do every year is what's a payroll reconciliation, where we have to compare our actual payroll for the year compared to what we told them it was going to be at the beginning of the year. And then they look at that and they say, oh, well, your premium was based on this dollar amount of payroll, but your actual payroll was higher, so you owe us more money. Oh.
And we go through that. It could work the other way as well if our payroll came in less, but I can't remember the last time that happened, a long time ago, somewhere else, but anyways, so that number did not affect the payroll or the employment costs. The other item is we did add one person to the head count, a power system maintenance technician. Now that position is not filled as of right now. We haven't even started recruiting for it yet. So that position will be filled at some time during fiscal 24, but the dollar impact of that was not significant enough to warrant changing our employment costs for fiscal 24. Our non-salary costs are not changing at 23.1 million, and our net income for the year is not changing at 8.6 million. And with this budget, district will meet its 20% cash operating reserve requirement. We will meet our obligation to fund our capital reserve. And most importantly, we will meet our debt service ratio covenant for fiscal 2024. So that's kind of a summary of the 2024 budget. Any questions, I'll be happy to take them.
I guess the big takeaway is the net 8.6. So that's pretty nice after all of our set asides and everything. So that's good.
Right. And well, I might as well mention now, like as kind of came up at the last board meeting, we did get a grant in May from the state of $1.8 million. And that will be reflected in the fiscal 23 financial results. So that's gonna help there. But fiscal 24 looks quite healthy as well. And it's a somewhat conservative approach too, particularly with regard to the MRF activity. Because as we had talked about, the the volatility of the pricing of the MRF products is such that, it's hard to predict what it's going to be, but it's been kind of dropping over the last 12 to 18 months. And so we kind of continued to be somewhat conservative in our planning for fiscal 24.
The debt service ratio covenant, since we talk about that a lot, if it's not too much trouble, what is the ratio? Or what is how do you come up with the ratio?
Okay, what the covenant says is we have to generate enough income. And it's kind of like cash income. So we basically take our net income number that's on our income statement and we add back certain non-cash items like depreciation expense, which is a non-cash item. Our post-closure reserve number, which is a non-cash item, we're not actually paying that out. And we come up with a sort of a cash income number. And the amount of cash income that we generate has to be at least 1.2 times higher than what our debt service obligation is for the year. So our debt service obligation is in the neighborhood of $4 to $4.6 million per year. So if you take 1.25 of that, that would be like 6 million and change, and we're well above that for fiscal 24. So we're in good shape.
All right, thank you for explaining.
Now
that.
we also have to certify every year in writing that we are in compliance with that ratio covenant.
Great, thank you.
I appreciate the glossary at the end.
Oh, good, you're welcome.
All right. I suppose there's public, for public comment.
Sure, sure. One of the items that was brought up in the last meeting was the categories of revenue, and we will be adding that as a section into this, into the report that Garth has, and it was a request just to share that what we shared in our last preliminary budget presentation was some of the pie charts that represented our regional customers and what that representation over revenue was versus member agencies and the South Hall position. So we'll add a little bit. We did include it in our last presentation, but we did have someone from the last committee say it would be good to have it in the report itself. And it was just a clear visual of where our revenue streams are coming from.
And that's for disposal revenue only. It's not everything.
Yes.
And disposal as in what comes over the scales.
Yeah, well, yeah, and what goes out to the landfill.
Okay, not the green waste.
No, it doesn't include any of the MRF or any of the other, well, it does include green waste because that's what, comes across the scales. But in terms of the material that we actually take in and where it originates from, and I covered this at the last meeting briefly, but 2/3 of our disposal revenue comes from our regional customers. And you can just pay, it's basically Greenway San Jose. They are far and away the biggest customer. And then in addition to them, we have the Santa Cruz County cities and county, and we have San Benito County. And that's about 2/3 of the disposal revenue. And the other third is made up, kind of split between the franchise cities here and other commercial customers.
All right, great job.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So go on to item 3, which is update on white paper.
And thank you, Chair. At this time, we're gonna have Guy give a presentation on the white paper. Same thing as I did with the last group was an introduction on the original white paper. Really looked at our area and all the services being provided for MSW and recycling, and kind of gave a regional picture of what our industry and our business looks like. After much discussion and feedback after the first review, we did interpret that as what do we do here at our facility that has impacted why we take outside of the region tons or outside of our members? Why do we take those tons? And that's a influence on cost of what we're spreading over a longer area versus just member agencies. And Guy's done a really, really good job with putting a presentation together that will really help us get to the written version of that second piece of our white paper. And we're gonna share a little bit of that with you. And the last group really took it very well. They didn't have much to add to it because it did capture the history dating all the way back to 2005, I believe. And some of the critical decisions that were made through this board that has led us to our existing operation, the whys and the outcomes. So I think once we can get your guys' feedback, we will come back to the finance and the personnel committees to deliver that draft. We'll take final comments and then we'll get that final draft to the board for an approval. And hopefully it does what we wanted it to do, and that's eliminate some of the questions on why we do what we do today and how are we gonna continue to evolve and change over time. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. Board directors. So, as Felipe indicated, the white paper began as just the part one, what I'm referencing, part one here on the slide, which was kind of a summary of common practices in the waste industry in California. In more general to those practices, as opposed to having specific information about the practices at the district. So part two is being added to provide a description of relevant events at the district that are associated with this topic about where waste comes from, why is it coming to the district, what does it mean to the district financially, and how did that evolve, through a series of historic board actions. So if you go to the next slide, I'll give a little overview of that history that's around this topic, which kind of begins in the middle of the 2000s. And around 2005, the board declined a $5 a ton disposal tip fee increase proposal and asked for cost control measures to be implemented during that budget year. And in the subsequent budget year, the board directed staff to develop a strategic plan inclusive of a financial strategy to diversify the sources of revenue, to broaden the customer base, and to seek operational efficiencies where those made sense to the district. And so that planning process began at that time, and the strategic plan was initially issued in 2007, and some guiding principles were developed that guided the district to how to provide services to other customers, and namely municipalities outside of Monterey County, which are often referred to as regional customers. In 2008, the board approved a contract with Don Chapin Company to do kind of mass sand excavation, sand processing to develop construction materials. The district benefited from a reduction in labor around that activity. They didn't have to employ as many people or expend as many hours hauling soil for the landfill, because the landfill operations were a small piece compared to the need to excavate the sand to create new landfill space in the future, being the larger piece of work. And so that larger piece was contracted to Chapin to perform. And that was paired with the processing of the sand for construction materials. The district gaining royalties on those sales of construction materials. Also delivering asphalt and concrete recycling. And again, the district gaining royalties on the sales of those recycled products. In 2009, the board approved contracts for some regional customers in Santa Cruz County. Namely the county itself and Scotts Valley and Capitola. Possibly Watsonville as well. Just that's clear on the timing around that particular contract because they were also operating their own landfill, so it was kind of a mixed situation. 2010, the strategic plan started to develop concepts around a district-wide collection service request for proposal. And the franchise truck yard idea was associated with that approach so that the adopted collection service provider could have a home for their operations, which is no easy task to find a home for a collection company in Monterey County. So it kind of improve the competition in the solicitation process. So those who actually own property with collection services in Monterey County had less of an advantage than those who were not present in Monterey County and who would need to procure a facility in order to deliver the services. So this, by having the lease facility here, alleviates that challenge for the bidder, and multiple bidders can utilize that concept in preparing their bids. So there's cost efficiencies to the member agencies by having that approach, and again, more competition. The MRF was also starting to be planned, the upgrades to include single stream recycling and also mixed waste recycling. Next slide, please. And you know, the implementation of various elements continued thereafter to gain more customers, to broaden the source of revenues, and to seek operational efficiencies. 2013, the board approved a contract with Green Waste Recovery for the post-processing residuals that are left after recycling occurs. As Garth indicated earlier, that's part of the regional contracts, and that those revenues are about 2/3 of the disposal revenues are coming from regional customers. So there's a considerable contribution by others in support of the member agencies and the services that the district delivers on behalf of the member agencies. The RFP for the district-wide collection services went out in 2014, and the truck yard was identified in there as an available facility. This 2015 bullet isn't written correctly, but in 2015, the truck yard development was contracted and underway, and the local green waste, franchise contract had already been signed. And, triggering the development of the truck yard. So that has been approved by the 7-member agencies. Then the renovations of the MRF were completed in 2018. And, the fortunate timing there was, China's national sword campaign that restricted offshoring the materials to China. And, caused some changes nationally around recycling. And, one of the local private recycling facilities made a decision to stop their operations, and so all the recycling materials came to the district at that time. And since that time, additional municipalities have been signed up for reprocessing recycled materials, which is the more financially beneficial condition for the district. The recyclable materials have value, and in addition to the service charges that are collected for the processing. So that was the flip of the market conditions, because until the MRF was renovated, the district had no control over recyclable materials. And so operating the MRF would be for sorting mixed waste to get a much lower volume of recyclables out of it at a higher cost of operation. And definitely a less desirable scenario than what has transpired. We also went out to bid for last chance mercantile operations. That's was seeking an operational efficiency opportunity. And in this case, the board decided to pair the district's mission of diverting goods away from disposal with the Veteran Transition Center's mission of helping veterans and their transition to full-time work skills and living skills. Next slide, please. This is a graph of the tip fee history, and right here is 2004, and there was a request for a $5 a ton increase, and that was made in 2004. And then there was a similar request in 2005, which was declined. And the board sent staff on the mission to develop a strategic plan with financial strategies to diversify the revenues, gain a broader customer base, and gain operational efficiencies. Next slide, please. And that's what basically transpired. 2007, the strategic plan was initially drafted. It evolved over time, and those multiple approaches were identified along the way and implemented starting in 2009 with the new regional contracts and growing from there. So basically the top row of tables is the 2007 period. That is preceding the strategic plan and financial strategy period. So the strategic plan was initially drafted in 2007 with the financial strategy. So this is kind of before, and this set is the 10 years that followed. You can see a trend in the staff headcount increase here from 119 to 145, but not much change at all in the volume of service. The disposal tonnage is relatively flat there. In this set, you see that there's a trend of lower head count and also a trend of increasing disposal volume. And so there's a much greater operational efficiency message in that data. So next slide, please. And this is a graphical representation of some of that same data. The blue bars are the average daily disposal tonnage in units of 100 tons. So the 7 value in 2,700 tons a day. The 17 value in 2017 is 1,700 tons a day of disposal, average disposal volumes. The kind of the metrics of efficiencies are around how much revenues are being collected per ton and what your expenses are per ton. And so you'll see in 2007, it reached a peak of $91 a ton in expenses. 10 years later, it was down to $59 a ton in expenses. So the unit rate of expense was 30% less in that after that 10-year period. And that 10-year period was delivering much of those improvements that were in the strategic plan. So it's kind of telling that story of why the district went out to bring in regional customers as opposed to just staying a service for the member agencies. And there was a series of board approvals on those regional contracts, third-party contract services to improve operational efficiencies and broadening of the sources of revenue during that time. So part 2 is telling that story and trying to address the questioning around why are things the way they are today.
Is it possible for us to get the slideshows?
Yes, but those can be emailed to you after the meeting.
Great, I think they're very valuable to remind ourselves of what we saw.
Yeah, this one came in this morning. And so it was not part of the packet.
I have a question being a little bit new. So when they bring stuff from San Jose to us and deposit it here and we landfill it, do they go back empty, the trucks?
Yes.
So do we ever factor in vehicle miles traveled and greenhouse gases and any of that in any of our considerations?
So that's part of a CEQA evaluation that occurs prior to the contract being approved. So
Do you anticipate, as we continue to try to fight climate change and vehicle miles traveled is an important part of it, any changes that might impact whether we can send them back empty, or is there some way we can send something their way?
well, I don't anticipate that. However, I think, the state policies around the goals for electrification and for greenhouse gas reductions will affect change in that activity of transporting waste. Presently, those are predominantly diesel fired engines that are driving between here and San Jose. And I expect that the state goals will influence an adoption of a different engine type.
Yeah, I wondered that too, because I'm on the AMBAG board as well, and with the RENA allocations, a great important part of that is getting jobs and homes where in the same place, so people aren't constantly traveling down the freeway to get to a job. And it seems like this would be part of that eventual state whether it will come down as a mandate, but state interest in what are we doing running empty trucks places here and there, and how can we be more efficient? And is there a way to cooperate with other areas? If somebody becomes an expert in how to get rid of all that plastic, and somebody else knows how to do something else, and coordination of the two to sort of tackle that in the future.
Yes, that particular contract does end in 2036, I believe it is, correct? So there's a finality to that contract, and, you know, there's the remaining time between now and that contract for the district to manage what adjustments will be made, need to be made financially when that contract is no longer present. There's if the district were to provide services to the LAFCO designated area associated with the district services, that would be an area that would replace this activity locally, as opposed to having the long haul contract. So that's the kind of the contractual setting. Separately, staff is certainly aware that there is an empty truck going back, and has on a couple of occasions discussed potential opportunities to fill that empty truck going back. And so it's not out of the possibility that that could still occur, because staff is keeping an eye on opportunities that might be associated with that.
That's good to hear. Yeah. We have to all adjust to changes and needs and the environment, what's going on.
I mean, isn't the alternative also that if the other options are to haul trash to a farther location, then, you know, that's also sort of the opportunity cost of it has to be calculated into that as well, that if we're not available for some of our closer regions, and there is nothing available for some of the regions that have contracted with us, that they would in fact alternatively, like, yes, it's a distance to send a truck to us and to send an empty truck back, but it could be an even farther distance as an alternative. So I think I'm always trying to think about, you know, the way that these pieces all fit together. But it's a good, I think, factor to think about, Karen.
And then, you know, bringing it back to the agenda topic, it is a significant contribution to the change in the financial situation for the district over that time period. So the contract expiring is going to reverse that contribution. And so, you know, that I raise that as a topic for staff to maintain focus on.
And you said, when does that contract expire?
2036.
36. Oh, we have a little bit of time.
Little bit of time.
Clock's ticking.
Sure does.
It's coming clear as to how this does benefit us financially and all that, and I'm just to follow along a little more on that, the kind of less tangible costs. The greenhouse gas, I think it was we can say, yes, if they had to go further, you know, whatever, over into the valley or something, the total greenhouse gases would go up. But it was brought up. What about in Monterey County? They would probably go down. And so as far as our constituents paying costs, like the less visible costs, like the added greenhouse gases of them driving here, the added damage to the roads of the heavy trucks, the, whatever, that kind of thing. How is that accounted for? I mean, I know whatever the trucks pay their gas tax and it goes into maintaining the roads, but is it someone that it's actually the state or somebody actually keeps track of that truck traffic on our roads?
I'm not aware of it. It's really kind of a global approach from the state on the highway department side. As far as road capacity, and that does transition into planning, and so comes into the CEQA reviews. But after the CEQA review has been completed, I don't think there's an accounting for that kind of activity. It's again more global, about miles traveled, emissions created, and those are on an estimated basis, not on a detailed activity basis.
And they usually show up here pretty early in the morning. I mean, they don't create worse traffic jams during the tourist times and things like that.
They're looking to avoid traffic so they can influence their time of travel back and forth.
Yeah.
And I think legislation takes a part of, the accountability of what they're allowing on the road, what they're not. Your registration contributes to fees, to road impacts, to road improvements. It's pretty intertwined. I don't think it all lives on our shoulder, but our considerations are very important of what we want to get done. We did look at filling the truck just recently, and the numbers didn't really pan out yet, but we did look at the opportunity to load some of those trucks back up.
So this discussion is really kind of outside the gate, and so it's not really associated with the member agencies or the member communities. I think their interests are inside the gate in the use of the landfill space for the purpose of disposal of that waste. So every cubic foot of landfill space has a value. And so that's where the financial aspects come into play for the district and the member agency's interest, because the value of disposing that ton of San Jose waste, or the cost, or the revenues received of that ton of San Jose waste is different than the revenues received from these Santa Cruz County customer. And so those revenues are not as great as the possible revenue value is for that space in the landfill. So that difference represents a cost that's being incurred, but indirectly incurred. And all things being equal, if you could change a customer who pays pays your desired value for that space in the landfill, as opposed to one who pays a discounted rate just to get them to be a customer, then you would be choosing, your shorter distance local customer who's paying a higher rate, and you can accept maybe a lesser amount of waste and therefore have a longer service life of your landfill. And so the benefits start to accrue that way.
For the purposes of the white paper, do you guys, Jason, you've been when are we gonna get white paper done? Do you think we captured what we're doing here in that chronological time order? And does that, for the last group, it did really suffice for Mayor Peak and Vice Chair Shirley, they really felt, yes, it is touching on the items that we question ourselves of how we got here. And I think for the intent of the white paper, we can move forward. If there's more suggestions from this committee, we will definitely try to get them incorporated, but the last group felt like we fulfilled how we got here, why the revenues would impact us, how our costs and our expenses would differ if we didn't have some of those other customers. So it'd be kind of the up and down motion, whether we had it or we didn't, and the effect that it would have on revenue or cost. We're hoping we captured the majority of it. You guys did a really good job putting it together.
Yeah, I agree, and I think and just to have the history, the background, and you know what the boards at the time were thinking, and that was part of why those decisions were made. I think is hugely important. My one hesitation is the outside, inside the gate, outside the gate.
Yeah.
Wendy represents a lot of people, and if Bruce were here, he might have a little more of the attitude of the decisions we're making here, how does it affect his community? Which is outside the gate. So that's why, the greenhouse gas, the truck damage, things like that is still on my mind. And at least we can say, well, we're doing this because it is the most efficient use of the space and keeping we're not only the space, but also of the staff and the efficiency of the whole production here has gone way up.
Certainly, we can keep this at a forefront of emissions as we create or enter into new agreements, that those would be requirements, whether it's a CNG vehicle using natural fuel or compressed fuel. We're seeing a lot more of that. We just received a brand new Peterbilt. We're on a schedule to receive 5 more compressed natural gas vehicles, which I think they're 98% clean burning fuel versus a 20% diesel byproduct fuel that would be burning. So we are already etching that in the gate process to influence the out of the gate process, and we can keep that in the vision when we're looking at new agreements, that we could essentially require or not require a certain type of vehicle like franchise agreements are doing today.
Well, that's way up. That's
Well, California already this year outlawed the older models.
Yes.
And that emission equivalence is probably considerable. And, we got electric coming down the road too. But I think this white paper is just stating the facts, man, nothing but the facts. It has nothing to do with what we're gonna do or decisions we're gonna make, whether these decisions are good, bad, or indifferent. They're just how we got where we're at here.
I think it's important though, I didn't know any of this information before, that it does show what it produced to change. And also it gives us, that look over many, many periods, but it will also inform when and if you do face more regulation as far as trucking in and out, because you'll be able to see the bump up and anticipate perhaps the bump down at the same time, and with enough ahead of time to start to look at other options at that time. That's great to put this all in a white paper.
I think, and I don't have the, this is Wendy, I don't have the presentation still on my screen. But I think that the other couple pieces that maybe just would be relevant to highlight would be the jobs, that these are local jobs, and that there is benefit to our community from, and the commitment so the jobs piece, and then just the mission and the commitment that ReGen has. The fact that we are locally controlled, the fact that we have a very clear mission to reduce waste, to support sustainability, to pay living wages to all of our workers. I think there's something to be said for that, even if we are collecting waste from other communities. It's kind of this I'm comparing it in a little bit, we have Chevron and Aria and oil, companies here in Monterey County. And of course, like we don't want oil companies here in Monterey County, but also the alternative is that we're importing oil from other countries where they don't have any of the protections that we have. They're not taking care of their workers. They don't, there are no regulations in place. So it's this sort of this push and pull. So I'm thinking about that and how we maybe highlight that a little bit. And then the other question that I'm often asked is around the 100-year capacity issue, or, why are we giving up our capacity? Does this mean that in the future, we're going to have to pay more money to send our waste elsewhere? And I think that was kind of addressed in I'm just trying to remember what were on those bullet points for the framework, but I think those are just other things I hear regularly about. And Jason, I just want to say thank you for, acknowledging that there are these perspectives. And, I may be of the opinion, like, we've got to figure out how to make all these things work, and we're all in this together. And, I don't think that our local residents or communities want to be paying the rates that they would be paying otherwise. And we have effectively a resource that's available. So as long as we're pricing it right and showcasing that there is benefit to our community in lower rates and stronger environmental protections being in place, and having local control and having local jobs that pay living wages, there are benefits to us making these decisions that we're making to accept waste from other places. So really, the facts, Jerry, 100%, like, we're laying out the facts, but we're also laying out the facts in a way that that are, appealing to our neighbors.
Well said.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Anyway, I was watching a thing on New York, the waste in New York, and they ship it like a couple states over. And I think that's the future, and think anything's going to change. From 1975 was 4 billion on the planet, now it's 8 billion. You can imagine what that math number is going to look like in another 10, 20 years. So, it's just, or hopefully, technology is going to increase. I mean, we're already getting rid of organics out of the landfill. So hopefully we end up with even more technologies that will eliminate it even further. I mean, we don't know because we're not in the future anymore.
Yeah, New York had a big article about digesting food waste. I mean, they had enormous amounts of it to make gas for homes. So it is something that our entire nation is struggling with. So it's good to be kind of on the cutting edge here, isn't it?
So we have no plans to do the mixed waste sorting.
Not at this time.
I mean, I know we're setting it all up right now, so we're, all the sorting is happening more at the source than here. But I mean, but in your presentation, you did mention that when Murph came on, was envisioned, it was going to handle that.
I'll be totally really clear about the intent of that MRF there. It may have been for mixed waste, but the amount of volume that it processes is only 350 tons a day of recycled material. We would imagine it would be less for organic material, and the throughput we would need would have to be 6 or 7 times of its existing capacity. We're really looking at the time we want to do mixed waste is another bond, $100 million at least, to build a facility to do so. We need land to put it on. There is a lot of constraints for us to get there. I think we're way ahead of other areas in California and our technology and our innovation. But to want to process mixed waste at this point, I think it's totally out of the picture. We need to really have money in line. We have to get there. I think that the expense of what we would receive in return would outweigh.
Maybe in 36.
Maybe in 36. That's still a big, that's a fast turnaround for a mammoth of an operation that you want to just erect up from the ground up. I would find it very difficult to get it done by 2036.
When you're not to
No, I think the need or purpose for mixed waste processing is being monitored. That's what staff is doing. It's going to be assessed in the feasibility study. We're also going to be bringing to the board soon, a month or two, or possibly this month, a request to conduct a waste characterization study of the MSW to get site-specific details about its composition. That will be another data point, and we've got a about 10 years of data points that are showing a trend of decreasing or of food materials and or organic materials in the waste stream. So that trend would generally inform operators or communities to continue improving behavior of recycling by the waste generators. You know, so that's why there's 3 colored carts. And so the people who are generating the waste can put the materials in the right colored cart, and when the contamination in those carts are low and the right materials are in those carts, they're not in the black can and they don't need to be taken out by a processing facility. So it's the generator, the customer, who's going to dictate whether there's a need for a processing facility. So there is self-interest there to avoid the cost of a processing facility by doing recycling right. And that the data trend in over the 10 years on the waste characterization would support to try to influence that further. And you have a chance to meet the 75% diversion that way.
Yeah, and if I can add to that, you know, as we look towards our vision of inspiring a zero waste culture in our community, I think one of the things that's really important for our community to understand is their impact. You know, if we looked at a zero waste pyramid, the number one thing to do is reduce. And it's very difficult to reduce when you don't know what it is you're generating. You're putting everything into one container and having somebody else figure it out. You don't really have a vision of what's happening. So when we have source separation happening at the curbside, it's education on a daily basis about what waste is being generated and if that waste is being diverted from the landfill or not.
Yeah, and I think the story to the waste producer has to be that a lot of the stuff that you're throwing in that waste can, that recycle can, is not recyclable. So it costs time and energy to sort that away. But like you said, reducing, and people tend to think, oh, it's okay. I just throw it in the can and it goes away and it gets recycled and made into t-shirts. I mean, people have an erroneous view of what throwing stuff in that recycle can actually means. They just aren't getting the reduce yet. You know, and it's important. I think new things are coming out, little sheets instead of buying cans, big containers of laundry detergent. I know I haven't bought any laundry detergent in years now. I use those little sheets that you tear up and they come in a little cardboard box and they're showing up all over the internet, you know, when you have an ad. And I think it's going to take that really understanding the costs of shipping things that are in plastic bottles and are mostly water, just really the mindset of it. And that's all education. It really is. That's why I was so adamant about getting stickers on the cans sooner than 2030. But we have to keep pushing the education because we don't get anywhere by just accommodating waste.
So staff's intent was to put this part 2 into text form with graphics and bring it back to the committees next. And then it's committee feedback and then bring it to the board after committee says go forward. So you'll
Sounds reasonable to me.
you'll see this again.
Great, perfect, perfected one.
Yes, you can have this too.
That's right, no problem. So item 4, I don't know what the.
It's a update on trial period recording board for the committee meetings, and Zoe has a little update. This is what we're going to continue to be doing on our video stream capacity.
Oh, that part right now.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, in October 2022, the board directed staff to look at a program to record all public meetings, the board of directors meeting and the 2 committee meetings, of which this is one, and post them utilizing the Zoom platform that we have, post them after the meeting to YouTube. So we've done that now for 6 months, and we wanted to provide some feedback to the committee and a recommendation as well. Viewership right now is relatively low. The recordings of the board meeting are averaging about 32 views per meeting. The recordings of the committee meetings are averaging about 16 views a meeting. But that said, it's only taking our staff about an hour of time to post these meetings online. And we do feel like for the benefit of the community, it's worthwhile continuing. So that would be the staff recommendation, and I wanted to bring that to this committee, and then ultimately this one to the board under consent, if that's the pleasure of this committee.
I actually thought that was high, 32. I was tired.
Oh, well, good.
But is that people who are viewing it live stream and after the fact, or just
No.
after they're viewing the recordings?
Correct. We do not have the capability at this time to live stream the
Or-
meeting. Well,
Well,
excuse me, we have the capability via Zoom to have them log in during the meeting. Correct. And then so the 32 views is not including viewing on Zoom, but rather the YouTube count of a post-meeting viewers.
I'm shocked anybody views these meetings.
Jason, we could make them more exciting. I know I watch other local government city council meetings sometimes on YouTube because they're the best reality TV around. But you know, we own that one. We could spice these things up a little bit and become good viewing, or not.
We just can't show them the donuts. They're gonna wanna know where that is on that budget.
Thank you, Zoe, for the update.
Yeah, let's say so. Great.
Do we need, Rob, a recommendation from this committee? I know it's not listed as such on the agenda to have this committee approve or recommend that the board approve.
Receive the
continuing.
information and make a recommendation to the board that the recordings continue. That could be the.
An action item for this.
Well, so I move that we recommend to the board, we continue doing them.
I second that.
Great. Roll call.
Director Polito,
Yes.
Director Campbell,
Yes.
Director Askew,
Yes.
Chair Blackwell.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right,
Thank you.
general manager.
I have a couple comments, thank you, Chair. We have our scale house project, bids will be due June 8th. And we will potentially have awarded by the June board meeting, so we're pretty excited to move forward with the scale renovations. We also have an update. We restarted our intern program, and we do have an engineering intern who's a freshman at UC Berkeley. Her name is Maya Macias, and she's a local resident, and I think we are really pushing here to try to influence locals to apply here that have the skill set to bring something to our organization. So we do have quite a bit of job openings available. And we were really trying to send a message that we are looking for locals to come and work here at ReGen. And, and when we're doing our last recruitments, we've seen a lot of people wanting to come here and work here, but it's a difficult challenge to leave your home state of Texas or Florida or Wyoming to wind up here in the Bay Area or the Central Coast and try to reside here, let alone whether it's on the peninsula or in the South Valley cities. We still have difficulties doing that. So I think we're really looking to try to promote how much we do here. The internship program was rejuvenated, and we're pretty excited to have Maya Macias here with us doing her internship, and she'll be here through only the first or second week of August. So she'll be here a short time, but it does give her a view that there is very good jobs here locally that are warranted for engineering positions.
Let me ask you, do you have outreach to CSUMB?
We do.
Because, they're always adding new majors. And they've really responded to the ag community and jobs that are important in agriculture. And I just wonder, trying to influence your local kids who go to school here that might be interested in professional jobs in waste management might be interesting to them as a major or a minor.
Yeah. And we're
The
pretty,
the new director is very, very approachable. She's really enthusiastic. I really think they did a great job recruiting her, and that might be another avenue.
we currently participate already in some of the curriculums that are there. Jay participated in one this year. He sat on a panel where they get to know a little bit more about our industry. So we are definitely trying to partner up as much as possible.
Great, that's good to hear.
We also had our public hearing. The notice was posted for the June 23rd meeting. Wellness program, here's an update. We starting in the new fiscal year, we'll be setting up a mini farmers market on the second Thursday of every month of July, August, and September. We'll be providing fresh produce to employees to take home. This is part of the wellness program.
That's
We'll
wonderful.
also be purchasing the produce from local farmers, organic farmers. The wellness program includes a fall wellness fair, which will be held in October, that allows employees to take the flu vaccines, biometric testing, wellness coaching from partners like Montage Health. And then we're also looking for the continued efforts around the wellness of our employees, so that, you know, we get our employees to be healthy, they don't miss as much work, and their involvement here at work is a lot considerably better. So we're excited about that.
That's great. That's really great.
We also had our communications team receive on Tuesday, yesterday, a resolution for Senate Bill 1383 implementation from Monterey County Board of Supervisors. Thank you, Director Root Askew, for helping put in the community's vision the work that we do here at ReGen for our public agency, and also Salinas Valley Recycles, that they also received the same resolution. And there's been a big influence between two agencies working together for a global position on Senate Bill 1383, how we approach it, how we're taking on difficult tasks, how we're implementing items, how we're trying to keep that moderately similar throughout the whole region or Monterey County, on making sure that our communication and our points are similar to another area and city, and not everybody's doing it their own way. So we do have a very strong position within our tech committee, and then also our position with Cal Recycle is well influenced by the partnership. So pretty excited, and thank you, Zoe, and your team for receiving, Jay for attending and being there and participating in the resolution receivable. Month of June is National Safety Month. This week we'll be focusing on emergency preparedness. We know that we can have natural disasters, we can have employee illness on site, we can have a chemical spill, and anything that's going on, we want to have readiness and preparedness, really, because if we're prepared, we can eliminate anybody from being seriously hurt, injured, or even possibly killed. So the entirety month of June, we do have a plan and a program in place to run through the whole month of June for our facility here to acknowledge the National Safety Month.
You know, can I ask you a question? We just had a little report from Fred Muir, former manager in Monterey, and he consults all over the country, and they've had several municipal operations, Dallas and some other places, have cybersecurity attacks that have really influenced what happened. They were shut down literally. And is that part of, are you talking physical safety?
We're more along the physical safety and actions that are going on, but we are aware of the cybersecurity attacks. Every now and then we get broached on emails or email addresses being used as a kind of a principal avenue to scam or send messages to somebody on your behalf that's really not coming from you. So we're aware of it. We will continue to be abreast around security attacks here.
I think he was talking also about the actual ability of some of these people to shut down certain services. I mean, literally, their grid and everything, and that's pretty scary.
It sure
It's
is.
something that we kind of have to start to think about these days.
Is it fair to say, though, that we're not that dependent It's not like, say next door, they have a big SCADA system and everything's talking to everything and they can shut down pumps and,
Yeah,
you know, if they were.
if they were to shut down our power or our grid or anything, we would miss our operation of the MRF for that period of time. I think we can have a backup plan for what we do with scales and to get up to the landfill and continue our operation. It may slow down our process, but we would have a capacity to continue to run. Unlike Monterey One Water, where you have chemical and biological reactions that are happening within the digesters and the process, so it could influence them. We all have a backup generator. They have a backup generator that they can power onto. You know, but it is good for us to be coherent that there is things happening outside of the area that could essentially happen here at some point.
And in 2020, we did create some contingency plans that are related to employees not being available due to COVID sicknesses potentially. And so there are some kind of contingency plans, like a structure of that in place as it relates to that, that maybe could be applied to other emergency type situations.
And the last item I had is we did have an incident on Saturday where we had an irate customer really just be out of line with our scale house attendant, with our traffic control person. You know, we did the best we could to remedy it. We will be putting some time and effort around communications to behavior when you come and use our facility. Would we want to ban anybody from coming to our facility? So we will be putting together some processes that we want our employees to take on. You know, when's the right time to call 911? When's the right time to get a manager over there? How do we de-escalate this? So there'll be some trainings, but we probably will bring something to the board that does a recommendation for conduct that is not going to be accepted here at ReGen Monterey. And we're looking at other things that can lead to the misconduct, but at the end of the day, we really want to have a slogan or a communication around misconduct and behavior when you're using our facility. You know, you come with the intent to use the facility, not to badger, from the traffic control to scale attendant, all the way up to the spotter, from the spotter to the dozer operator, and then on the way back out. Well, we can do without constituents that have misconduct and behavioral issues using our facility. So we will keep an eye on it. They happen far and few in between, but it would be good to have some plans and some processes in place to de-escalate or remedy a customer that continues to come in and have misconduct toward our employees and our operations. So just wanted to
That
report
kind
that.
of training would also carry over to if there were problems within the employees and so on among themselves, how to de-escalate is really
Yes.
important.
Yes. And that's all I have.
All right. There's no further information, then I guess we're adjourned.
Can adjourn, no further business.
No further business.
Thank you.